Hi, I want to introduce you to my friend Colin. He's going to tell us an anecdotal story about law enforcement, and some of it has to do with cyber and cybercrime. Go ahead, Colin.
Hi there. My name is Colin, and I work for an investigative agency. Um, I am a special agent, and I've been working for the government for about 9 years. So in late 2016, we got a crime tip about some fraudulent activity that was taking place. There was a victim that reached out and said that they had been defrauded of some cash through a Craigslist scam. So we met with this individual, we spoke with them about it, and they explained that they went on a Craigslist looking for a particular vehicle. They contacted the person who listed the ad, and ultimately they met up with the person who had listed the vehicle. Everything looked good. The car was there. The paperwork, registration, smog check, and vehicle identification number all matched what the actual vehicle displayed. So they made the transaction for approximately $21,000 in cash. A few days later, the individual, the victim, went to a local Department of Motor Vehicles to register the vehicle, and they provided all the paperwork, signed over from the seller, and only to find out that the vehicle actually belonged to a rental car company. So there's the main chain rental car companies: Hertz, Avis, Enterprise, National. It belonged to one of those. So we started to look into this a little bit more, and we ultimately posted a bulletin that went nationwide, or at least along the coast that I was working on at the time. And it was discovered that this was not the first time this had happened. So myself, along with some other investigators, went and we had a coordination meeting where we determined that this had happened 5 or 6 times that we'd known of, where a victim contacted a seller on Craigslist, met up, and exchanged cash for a vehicle, only to find out later that the vehicle was fraudulently represented and did not actually belong to them. We took a look at the titles, and the titles all had very similar title numbers on them. Although the vehicle identification numbers were specific to the vehicle, the title numbers were all just about the same. Another commonality was that the driver's license utilized during the transaction was also the same. It was not necessarily the same person, but it was from an address very similar in the same state. So it became very apparent at that point that the people who were creating these titles had some type of template for a title, and also a template for a driver's license, as well as a smog check, which was required in the states that they specifically were selling these vehicles out of. At that point, we started to look into how these actual these ads were being posted to the internet, and we served search warrants on Craigslist and OfferUp, 2 very common sites, and they were able to provide us with information about the IP addresses that were utilized in order to post these ads. These IP addresses that they returned to us, we were able to determine that they belong to specific cell phone carriers with a specific IP grouping, whether it was IPv4, IPv6, and additionally, we were able to get information on internet service providers that ultimately returned us home addresses in some circumstances. So we had narrowed down now some details. As this started to evolve, we started to hear about more and more of these cases, and over a very short period of time, we were up to about 75 cases, very similar in nature, where the same fraud scheme. So what we were able to continue to do at that point, along the investigation, were to set up some kind of makeshift, or not really makeshift, but undercover operations, if you will, where we contacted these people that had listed these ads that were similar in nature, and we had now narrowed it down to a few things that we recognized in the ads as commonalities from the other victims. And we reached out to these folks, and we actually went out and did meets ourselves with no true intention on purchasing the vehicles, just to do surveillance on the area and to see how they conducted these sales. How many people showed up, what kind of things they said during the interviews, or during the meetings, and things along those lines. We also did other things around the same time, like contacted the rental car companies and looked for video footage showing the people that showed up to the rental car facilities to make the rentals, or to actually rent the vehicles, and also showed some surveillance when they were exiting the rental car facility in the vehicles. So we got multiple face shots, and we were starting to come up with some very similar faces. At this point, we were able to utilize some other tools, like social media ended up being a very big tool for us. So once we identified a few of these folks and we were able to see their social media accounts, we were able to link these people together through social media. Additionally, we were able to see where they were posting, so we could see potentially where they would be in conducting these sales, and look onto these sales sites, Craigslist, OfferUp, in those specific areas in order to kind of see if we could get ahead of them making the sales. So that's kind of how things started to unfold. Ultimately, after it was all said and done, I said somewhere around 75 vehicles or so that we were able to piece together, 75 individual cases. The net loss was over $2 million. We had pieced together a group that included about 34 individuals that were indictable federally for charges of wire fraud, interference with interstate commerce, fraud by wire. So essentially, if anybody utilizes a cellular device or really anything that crosses state lines, then we have the ability to charge that fraud by wire statute, saying that not only did they interfere with or did they commit a crime in one state, but it affected multiple states, multiple jurisdictions, and the United States as a whole. So, all in all, about 75 vehicles, over $2 million in fraud, 34 individuals that were indictable. So once we did the wrap up, we had search warrants for cellular phones, tablets, laptops, and we were able to provide those to our folks that work in our forensic department, and they were able to download those devices. So minding that although you may have deleted certain material off of the device, as far as you can see on the front end of the device, every single thing that has been done on those devices creates a digital footprint that still remains on the device forever. When you wipe your phone, still there. When you sell it to somebody else and they get a new carrier, that old data is still there on the phone in some capacity. And we were able to uncover things like photos in laptops of the vehicles specifically that we were looking for, that we knew had been fraudulently sold. We were able to utilize cellular data from the telephones to see that particular cell phones were bouncing off of cellular towers in the areas of these crimes, where naturally the suspect said that they were not, but it was evident from the data that we were able to recover from the cellular devices and all the digital media devices that they were in fact in those places. So it's just something short that I wanted to share with you guys, and hopefully you were able to take something away from it and utilize it in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, so we're here with some follow-up questions for Colin. Let's start with the warrants. Were there any limitations about the warrant and the specific case as you were working through it?
So when we apply for a search warrant with the courts, we have specific things in mind that we're looking for based on the crime that's at hand. So in this circumstance, we knew that one of these cases involved these listing these vehicles for sale online. So we knew that the digital footprints that we would be looking for would be found on a variety of digital media. With that said, in the search warrant, the specific language would say that we were seeking all devices capable of digital storage. That meant thumb drives, Apple Watches, every laptop in the house, every cell phone in the house, every tablet in the house. And that goes for not just because a person lives in a residence doesn't necessarily mean that we would only be able to get those things out of one room. We would be privy to the digital devices throughout the house. So if that's a sister's computer that you may the subject may have used once or twice or maybe never but had access to, that would be one that we would be able to take with us and so on and so forth.
Excellent. How about the 34 individuals that were indicted? What did they have in common? Like, how were they connected?
Yeah, so the leaders of this particular organization were all Bloods street gang members. So although this is very non-typical for a gang to do such sophisticated crime, this was the crime of choice for this particular gang, and they had learned this from someone, kind of an OG, if you will. Kind of explained this, how to do this, and here's a template, handed it down, and at that point, a couple of the leaders broke off and kind of did their own small projects, if you will, in several cities, and we were able to aggregate those totals because they all utilized the same driver's license numbers, the same title numbers, and we could link them all together in one way or another.
Speaking of linking them all together, how did the different digital devices play a role in this particular scheme?
Yeah, so with this particular case, it was 100% based on the utility of computer devices and the internet. So without them being able to list these things for sale on these websites, this case would not have existed. Maybe long ago, maybe they would have done it in a newspaper or something like that. But this gave them the ability to get this information out to people in a wide variety of areas. So just for instance, they would not only list it in one city, but the surrounding cities. So they would avail these vehicles to hundreds of thousands, millions of people to view these ads and to be able to contact them. So both and not only did they use computers because these were computer based often, they would also sometimes just do it on the fly from a cell phone or from a tablet perhaps.
Do you remember some of the data that was found on the different type of devices?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of photographs of the vehicles because they had to take photos of. They took photos of the front of the car, back of the car, the VIN number, the odometer, just like you would expect in a legitimate car sales ad on one of these sites. They took the same type of pictures, and we were able to find these photos and in their digital devices. Additionally, we were able to get IP data for where they had accessed the internet, so we could link those to this IP address was utilized to list on a particular Craigslist ad. Well, that matches up with the addresses that we were able to find on this particular computer or laptop or tablet or whatever it was. So the links were very, very strong, and the evidence was overwhelming throughout this investigation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and we hope to hear other stories from you.
Love to be back. Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.